want to talk to you guys about how you met, and then I want to talk to you about what was going on when Helix started, and the BNs, piano drop, and the impetus that led to Sky One.
Oh, you're going to basics.
Well, let's just start with the beginning of where I kind of see it starting. And I just thought two people who would know the most would be about that period and have slightly differing views would be Paul and John. So,
well, I first know John from having seen him in the library, philosophy library at the University of Washington when he was a professor, philosophy professor there. And that would have been in 1965, maybe.
I came in 64.
Yeah. So I was studying there too for my thesis. I used that. I love that little library, and I remember John from seeing him walking the halls of that institution.
what was your first impression of him?
Well, I liked him. He was statuesque, not tall, but he had a kind of broad-shouldered.
He had a short stature.
He was short, statuesque. He had an air of confidence, and I thought, "There's a bright guy." And then we met later on, but frankly, I'm not sure what later on.
Oh, I remember.
Do you remember?
Yeah.
Okay, what is it?
Well, I had some experience in doing concerts and festivals and things like that. And they were doing such concerts down at Eagles Auditorium.
Right.
And I had heard that they were having lots of problems.
What kind of problems?
It was mostly coming from the police, and who trumped up this thing about, what was it, light show?
Light show dance, yes.
Yes, having nude women behind screens.
No, we didn't have any of that.
Well, no, of course
that
not,
was
but that's
maybe
what they
was,
were passed. They passed a law against that back in the 20s.
29, yeah.
Yeah, and so they were pulling out that law to shut down
Dusting it off.
their, I don't know, I don't remember what you call those concerts, BMs or something like that.
No, they were, all of them were benefit concerts for the overall cooperative structure, which was a group of bands and the light show company.
OCS.
Primarily.
That's right.
Yeah, OCS, yeah, which was a pun on Officers Candidate School.
So anyway, I went into the Helix office, which at the time was not where it ended up over.
Really? That was that early?
It was real early.
Yeah, that was up on Roosevelt in the University District proper. Yeah.
And I went in there and introduced myself and explained that I had some experience in festivals and that I would be perfectly happy to help out on a concert.
Who did you talk with?
You.
Me? Did I recognize you?
You didn't say anything. You didn't say, "Oh, it's
cool.
that short, statuesque fellow."
I was being cool or something? Because I'm sure I would have recognized you.
I would imagine so. But anyway, we talked for a while, and then...
You have a funny story to tell about this, I know.
Yes, that's true. There is a good one.
This is a good story.
I told him I would help out on the next concert. And so
At
I came
Eagles?
in, yes, at Eagles. And I came in, I think it was on Friday. The concert was going to be either that night or Saturday night. And I asked if all the preparations had been made, and Paul said yes. And I said, "Can I see the tickets?" And Paul went,
No tickets.
he had forgotten to have any tickets printed. So he went out, before the concert, he came up with strip tickets. And of course, those are not legal for concerts in the city of Seattle.
Now, you use the expression, "of course." Do you
Because
think everyone knows that?
Well, anyone that puts on concerts had better find
Would
it out.
know that.
Right.
Was this the first concert we did, the benefit? No, I don't think so.
I don't know.
This wasn't the one where we were busted by the police.
No, you were not busted.
So this is after we won the right to have
You
more
won the
festivals,
right to have it.
more concerts.
So, the second or third one.
Yeah, that was a ways down the route. It took about a month and a half or 2 months.
So
Okay.
the strip tickets. And that was unfortunate. But anyway, a representative from the city of Seattle came up to me after the doors had opened, and he said, "I'm going to have to close you down." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because your tickets are not sufficient."
Did they have to be a certain size?
Well, no, they have to have the price and the tax on them, and
Okay.
then the total.
Especially the tax.
And the tax, because, of course, that's what the city collects.
We probably didn't even know you had to pay tax, frankly.
Yes, they did tend to take a very relaxed attitude.
OCS?
Yes.
So
We were hippies, John.
and that's what I finally realized. But I talked to the person from the city of Seattle out of closing. I was always very good. I later became myself a bureaucrat. And I was always good with talking to those people because they're not used to someone who is willing to talk in a perfectly reasonable way and will give reasons, and so forth.
They never met anybody like you.
No, because usually they just get hysterical responses, or they get people who start kissing their feet.
Kissing their feet?
Yes,
No.
just don't, massa,
Please
massa.
don't
That
massa.
kind of crap. And I simply told him, I said it would be, extremely unfortunate to close this house. It's going to make the city look bad, them look bad, everybody will look bad. We'll do a count of the tickets, and because they are numbered after all. And we have the first one written down, and the tax can be calculated in that way and so forth.
Speak up a little bit.
Oh, and so he was very reasonable. The way people like that generally are, if you approach them in a reasonable way. Now, if you hit somebody who is trying to close you down for other reasons and just using that, that's more difficult. But he was quite serious, and I talked him out of it. So anyway, that concert went fairly well, and that was the first contact I had with Paul and with the local concert scene. And later I went to the piano drop, which was held, what was it, in March or April of 60?
The spring of
I believe it was
68.
April.
68, right. That was great fun.
That was quite a bit later.
Oh, yes, that's right, a couple of years.
Now, here's something I remember, John, about this story of your help and involvement, is that from the piano drop, we got the courage, or the idea for doing a multi-day festival came out of that, because the piano drop was such fun, and it was relatively easy to do it. So somehow, there was a decision to do a multi-day festival.
Who penned the idea?
Well, I don't think anybody knows, really.
Well,
I don't know. I don't think so. I really don't. It came out of that, and it was the same people that were involved in doing the piano drop. Some of them?
Was it a collective meeting afterwards that this idea came out
I
of?
can't remember a meeting or anything. So
now,
I think you're gonna.
When was the piano drop?
Well, it was in the spring of '68, but I can't. I think it was April.
Well,
probably.
now wait a minute. That's too late. Here's how
No. It wouldn't tell you. We put that. You put that festival together damn quick.
Well, here's how I remember.
Yeah.
I remember going to a meeting to which I was invited by an individual named Cy Noe in something like February of 1968. And it was in a house over on, as I recall, on Capitol Hill. And you were there, among others. And everybody said that it would be highly desirable to do what you're calling a multi-day festival in the Seattle area. And that it's feasible, there's enough people to do it, and they wanted to know essentially if I would be interested, because I was said to have a lot of experience in these matters. It's the way a person, say, who flies a little private airplane, a single engine thing, would have experience in flying jet fighters, because doing a sensible festival in a real location where there's electricity and rooms and doors,
Running water
and bathrooms,
Yeah.
as opposed to going to a wilderness location, there's just no there's one does not prepare you for the other. But somehow or other, I won't say roped into this, but it just sort of happened.
Here's what I remember. First of all, we have to get to Cyrus Noe and do it innocently. We can't prepare him. He has to simply, questions like regarding his involvement have to come up with some strategy, but without prepping him. To see how, yeah, that's right. You don't tell him what he did. You listen to him tell you what he did. Now, what happened, I remember, is that we're having a be-in now in '68 after the piano drop. On Volunteer Park, you're there on the grass. You remember that meeting?
Yes.
And I say, John, we're going to do a festival. And you're the obvious natural guy to do it. You say, I'm going to be out of town for a while. When I get back, you have to go to California.
Because I had to do a real festival.
When was the real festival?
It was always held in late June, and in what's that? That may have been the year that it ended on July 4th.
Is this the Berkeley Folk Festival?
The Berkeley Folk Festival.
Well, that figures, doesn't it, in terms of my sense of what happened?
Yeah.
You're going off to Berkeley for that folk festival,
right.
and then while you're gone, I don't know if I say this to you, but that's what happened. I said, I want to see it happen, and I'll keep it going and see who else is interested. And then we're always, during that time when you're gone, I'm always using you as a kind of reason why we can do it, because we have experiences coming back to help with it.
Yeah.
So that's what's going on in the early summer, as it turns out. And but this doesn't account for Cyrus Noe in February at all, which is completely off the wall as far as I'm concerned. But it must have happened.
Lord. I remember that meeting.
Yeah.
You were. I
was
remember
there.
you being at the meeting. But maybe it was much later.
There was a
Because it's
meeting.
always raining here. I try to remember things. It was cold and rainy. Well, that could have been in July.
Yes, it could have been. There was a meeting, a pretty important meeting, that was not on Capitol Hill, but was in Wallingford, I think, or maybe north of the University District, around 50th somewhere. And I think one of the photographers for the Helix, his name escapes me right now. Maybe it was his home. And that was an important meeting. No, it wasn't Alan. It'll come to me. That was an important meeting for the final decision to go ahead. And you were not there. You were still in California. But you were there in the sense that the promise of your skills was there. Yeah. But all this will be figured out. We just don't know for sure at this point.
I think February seems early. The be-ins were happening in March and April.
Yeah, February is a very mysterious date to me, too. I'm not sure what's happening.
I don't
Nor
know
do I
why.
remember anything about Cyrus Noe being involved, except as sort of a satellite.
But how did
To
he
John.
get involved?
The satellite to you.
But I didn't involve him, for God's sake. He involved me.
You disinvolved him.
Well, eventually, yeah.
How did he come to be part of the picture?
He actually involved you, but
Did-
I talked to you on the grass, John.
Yes,
remember
I know,
that?
but
So
he-
two people involved you?
Well, but who incorporated the New American
Well,
Committee?
that's much later. Yeah, that has to do. That's after we finally go ahead, and you're involved, and then the New American Community. But I think all this can be researched and figured out.
Maybe so.
I'm pretty sure it can.
Well,
Even especially when there's a legal trail, when you have to
Yes, well,
incorporate.
that's
So it was one of your first things you did probably was to appoint somebody to print the tickets.
well, yeah, and that turned out to be a near disaster because the guy that we got, his son, stole the plates and started counterfeiting tickets.
That was the guy who printed the Helix.
Oh, great.
Right, not real nice.
Nice guy.
And fortunately,
How did you handle that?
well, a disc jockey in Everett, he called me, and he said, "I just got a call from a guy who said he's selling tickets to your festival 50% off." He said, "I thought that sounded suspicious," and I said, "Well, you're absolutely right." So I asked him if he could set up a meeting with the guy who's selling the tickets, and I guess he told his the fellow. There's some people from Seattle that are very interested in buying a large number of your tickets, and so I took Roger Downey.
Did you really?
Roger Downey.
That was probably a good choice.
Well, because Downey was a campus cop at the
yeah.
time, and he was walking around pretending to be a policeman all the time. It was charming. So Roger and I went up, and here's this guy, and Roger came on like a cop. He said, are you something like, you must be out of your mind. We're going to have you arrested just immediately. You're for theft, for fraud, for counterfeiting. And the poor kid was just scared to death. And so Roger really did a good job. And that was the end of the counterfeit tickets. We destroyed the place.
Oh, that's marvelous.
Well,
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, that's a pretty good story.
A little bit about Betty Nelson, your attempts to find a place to have Sky One, and Betty's response.
Well, over here, Betty didn't. I could tell you exactly what happened. We put a message in the Helix asking for a place to take over for a few days for a music festival, and Betty sent a letter to us, and that letter survives somewhere. I don't know where, but I've seen it within the last 10 years in somebody's hands, maybe my own, and saying, yes, we'd be happy to have you up here. Did you go up and examine the site?
Yes.
Yeah.
So this was June? No.
Yeah.
Early July.
Yeah, in July. It's just rather amazing you could get that whole thing together in such a short
So
time.
from the time you found the spot to the time the event happened, Sky One, was it a month? 2 months?
7 weeks.
7 weeks?
7 weeks, was it? Yeah.
I'm assuming it was the first week in July. It may have been the second week in which it was. There wasn't much time. But I didn't like the site.
You didn't?
No, I didn't, because I noticed that there were a lot of plants growing there that indicated much moisture. And I pointed that out to various people. I said that this site is probably subject to flooding and possibly permanent water standing during the wintertime. And if we get a lot of rain during the festival, or say before it, just before it, we might have problems. But everyone was convinced that the rains don't start here until after Labor Day. See, I'd only lived here, 4 years.
You hardly knew a thing.
All I knew is that it rained a lot, but I didn't have a sense of when it rained and when it didn't. But I do remember.
It was an amphitheater, though. I mean,
but it did have. That's true. There was an amphitheater, like in a nice area, and it was easy to get to the stage area. The stage area wasn't deep into the property, but it was actually on the outskirts. And that was good. And there were real advantages to the site. But I was worried about water.
What about parking? What happened? Was there?
Well, the parking could have worked very nicely because there was a field across the little road then that wasn't being used agriculturally. And if I'd been able to talk the farmer into letting us use it, it would have been ideal. But unfortunately, he was a person who was not at all sympathetic to hippies. And he got hold of a copy of the Helix. And I went over and I talked to him about what kind of concerts, just concerts. It wouldn't be orgies or anything like that. And he pulled out this copy of the Helix, and unfortunately they had run a picture of a semi-nude woman, and he just sort of threw it down. That week of all weeks, threw it down.
Was it on the cover?
No, it was inside, but there it was, and all he did was point at it. And
well, he was right.
well, he was, as it turned out. The festival, there was some.
There could have been some naked drivers of those cars.
Yeah, there was a lot of things that I was not acquainted with at the Berkeley Folk Festival, which was held on
Such as?
The University of California.
Such
campus.
as?
Well, Paul put together a panel discussion on Sky River at ACT Theater, or actually rock and roll in Seattle in the 60s. And there was some discussion of Sky River. And I remember one woman stood up. She had been a teenager in 1968, and she went to the festival. And she gave a list of all the things that were just so marvelous. The mud, for example. She remembers seeing an individual who was walking around with a helium balloon tied to his penis.
That was the second one, not the first one.
Really?
Yeah.
He went to many festivals.
He was famous. Yeah.
He went to festivals in Oregon.
So he was, and then she mentioned some other things, seeing people making love in the woods and things like
Probably
that.
a first for her.
And it could have been, I've never seen anybody.
A combined object.
I had never seen anybody making love in a sleeping bag before the second Sky River, and I saw a woman and a man. In fact, there was a group of people standing around them
Cheering?
cheering. And I walked over to see what they were cheering, and it was,
That seems a little gauche.
yes.
I don't approve of
Cheerleaders.
that. Cheerleaders.
Right. But,
Poor things.
So
those were the things she liked. Those were and there was, maybe I should have mentioned this.
What?
Well, she loved that. And
She
Bob
loved the
Owen
festival.
and I, after that panel discussion, we chuckled over the fact that those were the very things that we were trying to prevent. We were trying to prevent people from screwing on the,
How could you
in
do
public.
that?
We didn't like the fact
How
that
could you stop people
that there
from-
was mud everywhere.
Oh,
We didn't like the fact that people were walking around
were there drugs
with
at the
balloons.
first festival?
I didn't see any, but of course there were. But
What was
it
your
wasn't.
question?
Were there drugs?
That's a
I'm
silly
sure there
question.
were.
Well,
Of course there were drugs.
In fact, that was acid was still real big in those days, in '68. And there was some guy there who was supposed to be famous. I don't remember his name.
Osley?
Honestly,
Oh,
no, that
come
was a
on.
rumor. No, I know.
You're
That was a rumor.
That he was there?
That
Maybe he
he
flew
was-
up with the Grateful Dead.
That's what people were saying. I
He
didn't
came to
believe it.
Seattle on a semi-regular basis and stayed with people on Aurora, Queen Anne side of Aurora. He came up here with a cigar box a lot.
Well, that's
67.
what they were saying. And then
What
I
year?
did.
67?
67, 68.
And a fellow walked up to me at the festival, and he said, "Look," and he had this beautiful briefcase, and he opened it up, and it was just filled with drugs.
A pharmacy.
Pills. It was literally a little pharmacy, and he had a big black pill. I remember that, and I said, "What on earth is that?" And it was a Quaalude. Does that mean anything?
Oh, yeah, Quaalude became very popular
Is that
after that, and it was sort of a
Yeah, I remember that
kind
name.
of ecstasy drug, but
Oh,
yeah, it wasn't quite as psychedelic as that. Just very, very.
It was a-
It was
just-
like a morphine, really.
oh.
Oh,
But
it was-
he had-
that
he
was
had
the drug
heroin.
of choice in the mid '70s.
So, but he had lots of acid too, and acid was real big at that person.
The third Sky River had a kind of a mercantile
An alley.
avenue,
An alley.
Oh.
which had a lot of different shops on it, psychedelic shops.
That was the
and
one-
a lot of them were just selling dope. There was a whole bunch of. That was the third one was the most brazen of them all. It was the criminal Sky River. The first one was the hippie Sky River. The second one was maybe I don't know. What would you?
I
Can
don't
you give
know.
a term for it? It
It
was the dry
Dust
one.
Bowl.
The first one was the mud, and the second was the dust
Dust.
bowl.
The third one was a little scary even.
So did both of you go to the third
Oh,
one?
no, I didn't.
I did.
Oh,
yeah.
did you really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Which one did you get naked at?
Well, I got naked all the time.
I don't remember that.
No, I didn't get naked all the time, but I certainly did the third one because we went swimming in the river. was the Camas River.
Right.
And that was, in fact, that day somebody drowned there in the falls. There was waterfalls right there, and they found a body
Are
in the
you getting that
waterfalls.
mixed up with the Buffalo Party convention where somebody fell from the waterfall there?
No, that's a different waterfall.
Okay.
I didn't know anybody fell from that waterfall. That's a long
He slipped in the
fall.
moss.
Oh, God, did it kill him?
Yeah, and he's buried up there somewhere, and they don't
gee.
know his name. He's an unmarked grave.
That's
Good
a terrible
Lord.
fall. Did you go to the Buffalo Festival? Yeah.
Did either of you go to Satsop?
Oh, yeah.
How was that?
After the 2 hours involved,
You were gone.
John
I
was
was
I
down.
didn't want to have
John
it.
was a smart man.
John.
How did? Okay, would you talk for a second about what were the difference between Sky 3 and Satsop? Because I think as they progressively went on,
Yeah, they're sort of alike, actually.
they became more out of control,
Yes.
more hard drugs, more gate crashers, more people there for the wrong reasons.
I don't want to say any of those things, but I think they're all true.
I'm not trying to put words in your
No.
mouth. That's
Go
what I
ahead.
think.
Yeah, well, they're great crashers at all of them, because how can you actually
can't
create
control.
We
security?
had this discussion before.
This is terrible, the security. Well, I came up a day late to the first Sky River, I don't know why, and my job was to try to rescue security in order, so that the festival could actually get ticket money to help pay for the transportation of the bands, and I gave up on that after working on it all night. Roger Downey was the first person that was in charge of that. The same Roger that busted so effectively the son of the Helix printer was in charge of security at Sky River, and I think he ran to the woods, maybe, or what?
Yeah, we had certain disputes about procedural.
Did he want everybody to sign triplicates or something?
Yes, he wanted, if I was to move any of his staff around, he wanted requests in triplicates. And I thought that was somewhat unreasonable.
Now, Roger is, do you know who Roger is?
Yeah.
Just a very competent journalist, and that's sort of a polymath, very brilliant guy. Well, didn't you know that about it?
No.
Oh.
I knew he was a journalist.
You what? The journalist?
I knew he was a
Yeah,
journalist.
he's a good translator.
You said he was Pollyanna? No, polymath. No,
Polymath, not Pollyanna. Quite the opposite.
So the Sky River, the first Sky River Rock Festival was called Sky River.
Oh, it was the Sky River Rock Festival in Lighter Than Airfare.
And
Now,
so-
Noe made that up.
Yeah,
Cy
that's
Noe
marvelous.
made that
Did
up.
he make that up?
And
Then did he go looking for lighter than air?
I said, now wait a minute, Cy. I said, this is not a rock festival. I really didn't think of it originally as a rock festival.
So what would you have called it?
I wanted to call it a music festival.
Okay.
But he said, no. He said, I'm not saying it's a rock festival. There is a large rock in the Skycomish River, and it's called the Sky River Rock. Is that true?
I've heard that.
Well, that's what
it
he
was
told me.
mentioned in.
Could be.
I think
And
it
he
was
said,
mentioned in Walt's
see,
book.
it's a sort of, it's a marketing device.
It was in Walt's book. He found
I think he mentioned something about,
the rock.
and then there was people chanting, "Sky River Rock, Sky River Rock."
Well, yeah, it's that pre-Platonic,
Freeform, free
water,
association.
air.
Yeah.
Well, no, it was a Greek philosophy of the pre-Platonic four elements. You had sky, river,
Well,
rock.
yeah.
All you needed after that was fire. And in fact, I think that's what I named the film I was working on when I started working on it: Sky, River, Rock, Fire. Yes, I did. Go back to the oldest notes on the documentary that I'm working on. I put the last of the pre-Socratic elements in place.
There you go.
Yep.
So
What
lighter,
do you mean by sky? You're identifying that with what?
Air.
so lighter than
Can you
airfare.
think of anything that more approximates with the pre-Socratics?
Well, it's the skies. I guess we
Yeah,
can.
air, yeah.
So the lighter than airfare. How? What part
Well,
was that?
It's Larry Vanover with one balloon, isn't it?
It was Vanover. Huh? I
And
couldn't
is he
remember
the
who.
person who's what the piano drop? Was it at his farm?
Yes.
Okay.
Larry's important in this because he I don't. there. You asked about how did the first thought of actually doing a festival after the piano drop occur.
Yeah.
Well, on our side, let's speak, the ones that really were most instrumental in getting John involved.
Helix people.
Yeah, Helix people. Well, we don't know. We can't tell you when the first seed of the idea came in, but it did have something to do with the success of the piano drop, and that was at Larry's farm. Now, I think the Cyrus Knowing story that John's telling could very well be an independent strand, a different kind of notion. And this is spoken to well by the fact that Cyrus was talking about the Seattle Center. Never once did we ever think the Seattle Center was an alternative for doing a festival. We wouldn't begin to try to get official.
No.
We want to get out of we didn't want to be under the thumb of the official, the Seattle Center people. We wanted to be out in nature.
Get away from the man.
Get away from it. Now, the Monterey Festival was an important model only because it was several days, and it had the kind of music that we were interested in having, not because of its setting. Because again, we were not. There was no place to really have it like that around here, unless it would be maybe Puyallup or something. But then again, who in Puyallup would ever give a bunch of hippies the opportunity to get together and play their music? And hippies, I mean broadly conceived. Anybody that read the Helix or liked the music, they would be, let's call them hip.
So
hip, let's call them hip.
So this was the first rock festival held in a pasture. Is that correct?
That's apparently possibly true, although there are some claims that there were some long concerts in California that lasted through a night and into the next day that were maybe predated it.
Was this up by Mount Tam?
I don't know.
North
maybe
of
Mount
San
Tam.
Francisco?
What was the day for that?
Maybe not. I've heard of that.
Magical Mountain, something or other.
What was the date for that, do you know?
I have it in my notes.
Yeah, well,
Figure that out.
You're going to figure all this out,
that out
you know
later.
that? You're going to have all the chronology down.
So this was the first rock festival, most likely held in a pasture. And then, would you talk about this for a second, John? Somebody from Woodstock, the people who were the promoters that had a plan, did they get some idea about a pastoral setting from you guys?
One member of that team, a fellow who's, I always remember his name, Artie Cornfield. Cornfeld? Yeah, I can remember his name because I always think of Van Gogh, who painted an Artie Cornfield.
That's great, I like that.
And when I first saw him, that's what entered my mind. But
did you ever meet Van Gogh?
No,
I'm
Artie. Yes, he called me, and he when I was by this time I was a disc jockey, and he called me. This was in probably the fall of '69.
After Sky 2?
After Sky 2, and he said, "I'd like to get together with you and talk to you about rock festivals, outdoor rock festivals." And he had identified himself as being connected with Woodstock. So I went down. He had a hotel.
It had to be the fall of '68.
No.
This is after Woodstock.
This was after Woodstock.
This is reflection.
That's right. And so I figured maybe he's going to do it again or something. But it turned out he didn't really want to talk about rock festivals. He was a record promoter. And he had this album that he was promoting.
God. What a sleaze.
Well, the record business is like that. So anyway, he hustled me, and he gave me a copy of this record. I don't even remember who it was. It was awful. Not awful, it was just another run-of-the-mill.
Commonplace, maybe?
Commonplace.
Yeah.
And I think I played one song off that record once.
Did you learn anything about, did he know anything about Sky River? Was he even aware that there had been a Sky River?
Oh, yeah. He knew that I had been involved in it.
Yeah.
But he really wanted to get to me because I was a disc jockey.
Right.
Did any of those people from Woodstock call you after Sky 1 and before Woodstock?
No, but he told me. We did have a brief conversation about rock festivals. And he said that they were aware of it and that it was one of the inspirations for their festival, that it's something that can be done, to have a 3-day festival in a pasture. And of course they were a lot smarter than us because they got recording contracts for the music, done at the festival, and all sorts of things like that.
They filmed it.
And they filmed it. And that meant that when the periphery broke down and they couldn't control people coming in and out, it didn't matter that much because they made their money off the film and the records.
And they always had the idea of making money. These guys, they were capitalists, entrepreneurs.
True. And we weren't.
We weren't.
We were trying, to break even.
And give some money to a thing called...
Yeah, and then the New American Community was a non-profit corporation. And it was going to deal with any surplus, any money left over. Now that brings up another amusing story. Because one group that approached the New American Community for support was called the Mexican American Federation. It was a group that was headquartered, as I recall, in Yakima. Very nice group of people. And they said that they would be interested in, I think they had they worked at the second festival. Very nice people. Unfortunately, they called themselves MAF, M-A-F. And this apparently set off the rumor that I had sold Sky River to the Mafia.
I didn't know anything about that.
Oh, you didn't hear it? Yeah,
No.
Some guy accused me of that. And I said, now I haven't gotten any offers from the Mafia. But if you know any Mafia people, would you have them approach me? Because I think we might be able to work something out. He didn't think that was funny. But I was never approached by anybody that wanted to buy Sky River.
Ludicrous.
It's just, the whole idea is just grotesque.
And how about this group out of Yakima, the newspaper?
Oh, you mean the Yakima Eagle?
Yakima Eagle.
Well, the Yakima Eagle was a forerunner of what's going on
Fox
now.
News?
Yeah, Fox News.
Yakima.
Oh, yes.
He
the
did
Yakima
have some
Eagle.
charisma, though. He was very attractive
yes.
to some students.
And yes, that's true.
The Yakima Eagle.
He had kind of a short neck and long hair.
Michael.
Michael Lerner, yeah.
Learning.
We'll get to him.
He actually... No, let's skip it.
Well, anyway.
Later.
Nobody liked it.
He took a girlfriend from me, actually, I remember now.
Oh, is that right? She was. I think I met her.
She had bad taste.
So was
In
the
the run-up to the second Sky River, the Union Pacific sued the New American Community, which of course was the legal entity that was responsible for the second Sky River. They said that it would create dangers because the site that we picked had a railroad track, a double track running through the site. Now it was up on it wasn't just running right down the middle of the site. It's on a hill. What are those things called?
Grade.
Grade.
Separated grade.
A separated grade. And it was fenced off, and we didn't see any problem, but the railroad was afraid that something might happen. And they got a judge to actually issue a restraining order against us, stopping the production of the festival. And we did have a lawyer. We had a couple of lawyers because the ACLU was interested in the New American Community, and the head of the ACLU, a fellow named Mike Rosen, was actually on our board of directors. So Mike had got a lawyer who would do it pro bono. And we took it to the Washington State Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the festival because Union Pacific refused to put up $1 million bond. And the judges felt that their concern is not very real if they're not willing to put up a bond. And so they dismissed the Union Pacific case. And this deeply impressed the Yakima Eagle with the power that a communist agent such as Professor Chambless had. In fact, I think that article said, just imagine the power of this man who can dictate to the Washington State Supreme Court what they are to do. And
these are the idiots that are still around.
yeah, they're now
they're in control.
Now they've taken over the Republican Party, and they have very prominent representatives in Fox News and so forth and so on.
The Eagles, what do you call it? It was the Yakima Eagle tried to stop the Helix by getting to the publisher. So they began a campaign in the Yakima Eagle, said, where is this thing printed? We want to find the printer and create a boycott on that printing shop. But we put in our paper, when we learned of that, we named the printer, and we said they should have asked us, we would have told them. I mean, it's nothing to hide. But of course the printer was on our side. It was the same printer whose son did the bogus Sky River tickets, but that's irrelevant. You can't control.
Maybe we could have put out a bogus issue of the Yakima Eagle.
Should have. What would you call it? The Beagle?
No, wait a second. I didn't want to bring that in. He couldn't control his son. His son did that on his own.
It wasn't his fault.
No.
The son just did that.
Yeah, that's impetuousness of youth.
Yeah.
And all that. So, but go ahead, ask your questions.
About the lighter than airfare and Larry Vanover.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
so
yeah, that's a good one.
So you were talking about the balloon.
Yes. The lighter than airfare was supposed to be, Vanover was going to get a fairly large balloon.
Where does one get a balloon like that?
I don't know.
No, they're available. There's recreationists.
I guess he Googled balloon.
Yeah.
Of course, that was before Google.
Yes, it was.
Anyway, he wanted to tie himself to attach himself to the balloon, and it would be filled with helium, and then he would be able to jump, and he would go real high and bound across, and this was lighter than airfare. And I liked the idea. I thought it was very funny. And so we got him a balloon, and we got him the helium. And the balloon finally arrived, and Larry took it up to the site with the helium, and they filled it up. And they had not tied it down properly, and they filled it up, and it blew away. And so
was this at the first Sky River?
Yes.
Okay.
The lighter than airfare lasted about 3 minutes. And
I didn't know that. I know we called it that then, but I didn't see any balloon. I was wondering.
And then we had to call the FAA because the balloon was so large that it became a menace to air traffic.
How large?
It was great fun.
I had heard that. Come to think of it,
It was probably 6 feet long.
So
say a radius of 6 feet.
was he going to give rides, or was he going to be the only person who
I
used
think
it?
he was going to be, Captain Helium or something like that, and just leap around.
I have film of it at the second.
It was at the second. It worked at the second.
where he's leaping.
Didn't get away from it.
But I remember how it was really devastating to me because almost everything went wrong. It was just constant.
Constantly
constant
things
defeat.
go wrong. Yeah.
Then you had to improvise. Then But I was really looking forward to that balloon thing, and then he lost.
John, did you ever see the beauty of the mud dance at 68?
I thought one of the pictures that suggested African art with their mud. I thought that was rather impressive. But no, I did not. I was not impressed by the beauty of the mud.
And the people having fun and laughing and sliding in it and throwing it at each other didn't enjoy that at all.
Oh no.
Were they doing a dance around in a circle?
Yeah, it was quite elaborate.
And talk about the spring that
well, that was part. Oh, Jesus
What is
God!
that?
You're reminding me of all these things.
right in front of the stage was a
Right in
low
front
point.
of the stage, there was water was bubbling up.
Artesian spring?
John
So-
had a sense of this.
Yeah,
he
I
had
know
an
he
inkling.
did.
He was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
With the
But
plants.
anyway, the guy came. he talked. He got a crew together, and he said, all we have to do is put dynamite in that and set it off.
Is this Hill Dufresne?
God, I don't know. I've repressed. I even repressed. The guy with the balloon? Who was it?
Larry Vanover.
Larry I can't even remember his name. It was such a blow.
Van Gogh.
But I remember that. But anyway, this guy set off dynamite, and of course, the water then came out. Instead of coming out 1 inch, it was 3 feet.
So this was a day or two before.
And that's what created the mine.
Well, this is a day or two before.
That's right. And
It wasn't right in front of the stage. It was a little bit off.
It was a little bit off,
Yeah.
but that's what created the mud sink,
I didn't know
where
that.
they took the pictures.
Goodness
and this was
gracious.
a guy. It cost the festival $100 for the dynamite, and the net result of it was more disaster. Oh Lord!
Let's count the disasters then. There's the dynamite.
And
There's the
Vano.
security.
And then the lack of control.
There's the security. There is the winter. I mean the weather.
Yes,
the rain.
Mud, the
There's
dust,
the loss of the balloon.
the dust, the sky.
Loss of the balloon.
It's a lot like what Bob Owen was saying. You know, the Sky River gods keep throwing down thunderbolts.
That's right.
Stop it, and it just keeps kind of
Keeps going.
regenerating
And
itself.
it's remembered so wonderfully by so many people,
Yeah.
like the woman at that.
Oh, she loved it.
She loved it,
And a
that's-
lot of people remember it very fondly.
Most people do. I don't remember anybody that remembers that wasn't in the thick like you were of having to deal with the problems. If you didn't have to deal with the problems, you put up with the rain,
I imagine.
and you were in a community,
That's
and there was tremendous music, and so
Oh yeah, it was. I could see that. I knew that it was a marvelous thing in certain ways, but it was just very painful to try to, you're trying to get enough money to pay everybody.
you couldn't pay everybody, could you?
Well, we borrowed $10,000 after the festival and paid it.
How did you pay off the 10,000?
We did, but
So
we borrowed
it
it
was
from
like a
somebody
gift. Yeah,
who had a lot of money.
yeah, right.
It's hard to make money at a rock festival,
It really
especially
is,
back
unless
then.
you sell.
Nobody made any money.
Nobody. It was.
Seattle Pop Festival said they made money, but
I don't think they did. Sky River, the second one, I thought it would work better because of the location, but people found ways of sneaking.
Oh, and just go up over the,
Well, that's
go down the
easier.
stream or something.
What they did was just go down. Actually, the railroad track crosses the highway at a certain point. People were getting on it and coming fairly close, and then going down the hill and coming right in.
With the water.
There's just absolutely no way to control it. It would have taken, well, you would have to put up a huge fence. And, who had the
We
money
need
for that?
the Mexican border technology.
Yeah, that's true. We could have put some drones in the air and killed a few hippies, and nobody would even have noticed. Hell, they buried this guy at one festival. Don't even have his name.
That is a sad thing. They buried the guy, and they didn't know who he was, and they buried him there.
I have a newspaper article I could share with you.
Yeah, that's
I
fun.
know. But anyway, it was very frustrating, and that was my last festival.
How about, no, it wasn't. You did the next one. Oh, you mean, no, that, right, the second one, yeah. Were you
Because
approached to help with the third one?
Yes. They didn't actually ask me to help them, but they asked me to be an advisor.
That was Rick Alba.
Yeah, and I said the only advice I have to you is don't do it.
Do you remember him from helping Sky 2?
If I saw Rick Alba, I'm sure I would remember. Well, I don't know. It's been 40 years.
I associated with the Seattle Collective.
That's
SLF?
That was a,
Yeah, SLF.
Oh,
He
is
was
that
part
right?
of the Hydra Collective.
Well, there was a few collectives.
And then there was another one. It was the I want to say Panda Collective.
I remember something about Hydra Collective.
So, would you talk a little more about the? What do you remember of the be-ins? Did you guys go to very many of them before the volunteer ones, volunteer park ones?
All right, I can tell you the history of the be-ins. The
Sure.
first be-in is in Cowan Park, and it's Country Joe and the Fish were in town, but they didn't play at it because there was no music at the first be-in. It was just a gathering of friends, and it was in the spring of '67.
200 people?
More than that.
300?
There are pictures, maybe 300, yeah.
Yeah,
I don't think you probably
I don't
made that.
think that's-
No. That was something that was, that was before the Helix was actually printed. We were in the process of setting up an office, and this was there was no advertising for it. It was word of mouth. But it was a delight. I was given pictures of it by an undercover agent later on who had taken pictures for the cops, and he gave them to me. I've got 3 times I've been giving undercover pictures in the last
Interesting how
20
they get
years.
back to the source of the people who threw the event.
Yeah.
So there was one in Golden Gardens?
No, there was one in Golden
There
Gardens,
was,
but that wouldn't be it. The next one.
that
The
was
next
the
one is
Grateful Dead.
yeah, that was a Grateful Dead thing, and that was again more spontaneous than anything else.
Right.
Is that where they played in the back of a flatbed truck at
Yeah.
the end of the
Right there. Right.
parking lot?
Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah.
And it actually came off pretty well.
Did you go to that one?
Yeah.
Oh,
In fact, I met, what's his name, Jerry Garcia.
yeah.
And did they have a gig that
I had
later
lunch
that?
with him.
Is that right?
Yeah, when he was there. Yeah.
Do you think they had a gig later that night at the Eagles?
No, I think
I
yeah,
probably
something
did,
like that.
actually. That would make sense. They would be
Right.
in. That's right. Just like the famous English group when they were in town. We had a little.
Pink Floyd.
Yeah, right. They had a gig, and then they went out, and we had a thing at the Arboretum.
What year was that?
Probably '68.
Do you think Pink Floyd played in the Arboretum?
No, they didn't play.
No,
It
They
was-
came to the event?
Yeah, they just.
Was what's his name?
It was sort of
still
a
with them?
party for them.
Sid Barrett?
I don't think he was.
I don't think so. I think he left in '67.
Yeah.
They were really good back in the old days.
Yes.
So what other places did they have be-ins in Seattle before they started
Volunteer
having
Park.
them?
Well, it just went from Cowan Park to Volunteer Park. You were
Didn't
talking
they-
ones, the
that was the
organized
double.
ones. Okay, well, you had them also in Ravenna Park. We had a be-in there once. Cowan Park, I mentioned. Golden Gardens.
Was there one in Carkeek?
I don't
think
remember any in
Carkeek had
Carkeek
opened.
Park. Nothing I had anything to do with. But I am the one who called up the park department and arranged for them to turn on the electricity.
Did you have to fill out a permit?
I don't remember anything like that. The woman at the park department was totally in for it. She was very much a fellow traveler,
Well,
very
that
sympathetic.
was Teresa Dinwiddie.
Was that who it was?
Yeah.
She was great.
Teresa was very good.
So we could.
She later hired me.
Grapefruit juice, anybody? We got a lot to drink here already, Jenny. So, but thank you for being considerate.
Good God, it's 3:22.
Are you through?
Well, I don't know. Am I sure?
Anyway, so the next one would be the one at Volunteer Park, which was really, there's a lot of pictures of that.
Yeah.
And that, I think, probably was the one, or may not have been. We regularly had them at Volunteer Park after that. Not
Is that where OCS started? Or was that Helix sponsored?
No, OCS certainly is close to that, but OCS is earlier than that, or OCS is earlier than the Helix.
Right.
OCS comes out of the Free University, which I was the organizing and running, really, and that's where that started. Yeah, that's where the Helix started. Was in a conversation I had with Paul Sawyer, who was a Unitarian preacher,
Oh my God!
and he
I
said,
remember that now.
"Remember that guy?
Whatever happened
he just
to him?
died. He
Oh,
died
he
this
did?
year.
Is that
Yeah."
right?
He wrote an interesting book. I'll give you a copy. He published it just before he died, and it's sort of his history of the movement.
Oh, is that right?
I'll give you a copy. I'll
Oh,
send
I'd
it
love
you.
to read that.
Yeah,
I'll
that
give you
would be
I'll give you a
useful to
copy. He intends towards conspiratorial theories, but he's okay. He certainly was a sweet guy. But it was a conversation with him in the Helix, in the Free University office, and I know where the window was, where he stood and where I stood, and he says to me, "What we need is something like the Berkeley Bar," and that's what started the Helix. Because I said, "Well, then we'll have one. We'll organize one." Took a long time. Took about 3 months to pull it off. Finally, the people that were involved sort of revolted and were tired of having to wait so long with how long I was taking to do it. So they sort of kicked me in the pants at a meeting at the Blue Moon. They said, "Let's get this thing going now," rather than just talking about it.
Tom Robbins
I was
there?
too much like Roger Downey. I was seeing everything in triplicates.
Do you think Tom Robbins was there?
Well, Tom was involved with the Helix, yeah, but he wasn't at any of those meetings, no. Tom was busy writing another roadside attraction.
Being part of the Shazam Society.
I think the Shazam Society. When did another roadside attraction come out? That was like 70, wasn't it?
So
I remember trying to interest the Rolling Stone in writing a review of it, because I had met the Rolling Stone editor. What's his name?
Ben Fong Torres?
Yeah. What was it?
Ben Fong Torres? He was one of the writers.
No, it's the other
the
one,
founder of it.
Oh.
I visited him in San Francisco. So I called him up and told him about Tom's first novel, and they did review it. Can't remember his name. He's a famous guy. God, I just can't. But that doesn't mean I can remember his name. But Tom was at the first Sky River. I think there's a picture, actually, of Tom and me together.
I've seen that picture.
Yeah. I'm wearing a Buddhist saffron robe. So sorry, John. I was one of the problems, maybe.
So do you think that the BMs led to the piano drop, and the piano drop led to Sky?
Certainly, yeah. There was a lot of spontaneous music in many places. Some of it semi-organized. You'd have to call the BNs semi-organized, because all you had to do was tell the bands to show up and turn the electricity on, and they knew better than anybody else how to put it, do the rest of it. So that's
their groupies would, or their roadies would set up all the equipment.
And a lot of these, the roadies and the plays are the same thing, because these are just local bands. These weren't big professional groups, although they made pretty good music sometimes.
Oh yeah,
So,
I like the scene here.
Yeah, it was a nice scene. They were fun. They would just lasted an afternoon.
How many do you think there were in Volunteer Park? 3 or 4?
Yeah,
Somebody,
5 or 6 maybe.
Who did that concert with all the local groups that was on the University of Washington campus in the gym?
We did.
That was you, okay. Yeah,
OCS or
that was a Victories. No, that was to show the city council that stopping the Eagles Auditorium, or trying to top the Eagles Auditorium benefit. With the lighter, the cops, the Park and Larkin detail come. You have the tough cop and the nice cop.
Their names were really Parkin and Larkin?
Yeah, that was a great night.
Could you elaborate on that a hair? I remember reading about it.
Why don't you ask me that
next year
later on, and ask John, because I can elaborate on that, and ask John some stuff, because he's yearning to probably get on. John?
What else?
What else?
Well,
let's see. Do I have any more amusing stories?
John's told me some very amusing stories. I'm trying to recall them.
Oh, yes, John's got a good storyteller. It's interesting. Did you have to pause much after the first one to decide to do the second one?
Well,
they talked him into it.
They talked me into it. See, Bob Owen and my wife, they kept the New American Community going. They actually had an office in the University District for several months. And they were really, sort of keeping it going. But I had an offer to do a festival in San Francisco. That was done. The festival never happened, but that was discovered much later. But I finally I thought it over for a long time, and then I decided to do the one up here, mainly out of loyalty to Bob Owen and my wife, more than anything else, and to you, and everybody else that thought so highly of.
You were closest to your wife. You're closer to your wife than to me, I think.
Even in those days, I think that was true.
I heard your wife Dorothy had a lot to do with Sky 2.
Well, she did. She and Bob kept everything going.
Are you going to interview Bob?
I have several times.
Well, I could have asked Bob to come today, but I thought we were just going to talk about the real preliminary stuff.
Yeah, I was trying to keep it more to the preliminary, but sometimes
because he didn't get involved.
Sometimes discussions organically happen, and you don't want to stop them.
Oh, that's right.
This has been fascinating to me.
That's the best part.
You never know where it's going to go.
Yeah,
especially with you two.
Yeah. So it was then Dorothy and Bob encouraged you to continue
Yes.
on to the second
To the
festival.
second.
And we were all, the rest of us were also doing that.
Yeah.
Because we all wanted to have another one.
Right.
And one that wasn't muddy, although we didn't.
Anticipate a dust bowl.
Yeah. I never thought of the second one as a dust bowl. And although when you look at the film, it's beautiful, the dust. It's like a filter.
Well,
people are
the
dancing
mud
and the
was
dust is coming up. It's beautiful. And the lights, at night especially, it's not like it wasn't. But then you think, breathing it, my God, it must have been awful to breathe that stuff.
And the smell of
cattle poop in it and stuff.
Well, whenever I think of that festival, I remember the smell of pizza because Morgantown was. They had a thing, and they were making these pizza sandwiches, and that was about all I ate for 3 days.
Have you eaten it since?
No, I've never touched a pizza sandwich since then. But,
yes, they were right near at the head of the line.
That's right.
We have pictures of that.
I always think of that smell.
They did a lot of festivals. They were at Sky 3 and Satsop, too.
Oh, yeah.
Satsop also.
Yeah, that was a good group.
Morningtown Restaurant. Did you ever go to Morningtown Restaurant?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah. I like that restaurant. Tom Ninkovich,
He started it.
He used to be part of the Berkeley Folk Festival.
Really?
Yeah. That was, I love that year when he was doing the technical work and I was doing the logistics and all that. And Barry, of course, got the talent and the money. And a guy named Peter Sharkey did the tickets and, the account creature. And the four of us. That was a hell of a team.
That's nice.
Boy,
yeah.
That was a great festival. And 68 was good, too.
You guys would probably make a good interview.
Yeah, Barry's very bitter because of...
Why?
Well, the festival that I said never happened was the Wild West show in San Francisco.
Yeah.
And it was destroyed by the people who claim that music belongs to the people. You've heard of such people.
I remember that. Yeah.
Tell the story about Sky 2 at the stage thing.
Well, this was actually at the Seattle Pop Festival.
Okay.
There were some people that had been hired to do the security, and they were an organization. I won't mention any names, but they were an organization. And their leader, the guy who was in charge, he came up to me the second night, I think it was, and he said, we're leaving. And I said, well, it's not over, there's another day. And he said, no, we think that music belongs to the people and that we shouldn't have tickets. So I said, now that's impossible because all this, the money is spent, you have to pay groups and so forth and so on. He said, well, music belongs to the people. So I said, all right, let's make a deal. I said, you come with me. I said, the Birds are just performing and they'll be off the stage in a few minutes. If you will go with me, we will talk to the Birds and you explain to them that music really belongs to the people. And if you can get them to waive their fee, then I will announce to everybody we are waiving no more tickets, everybody can come and go. I said, so let's go because they'll be off the stage in just a minute. And there was a long pause. And he said, well, I guess we can do it one more day.
Brilliant. Brilliant move.
And so they may as well have left.
What was the group? Yes, tell us the group.
No, I'm not going to mention that for history.
Why not? We're doing history here. Why can't we know that?
It's too recent. This is the sort of thing. It's okay.
They might still be alive.
Are they still your neighbors or something? Or?
I think that guy's still around.
Was it?
And what if I would misremember it as much as I think I must misremember this meeting in February where all these people.
No, I wonder what it was. I wonder what the group was. We'll have to figure that one out.
Yeah, you can probably.
We'll figure that one out. Yeah.
Right. But I'm not giving any hints.
All right.
So, we haven't talked about the Seattle Pop Festival. You were asked by Boyd Grafmeyer to help him with the Seattle Pop Festival, and he would help you with Sky 2. They happened about a month apart, summer of '69.
Yeah, 6 weeks.
And
Yes, and so Bob Owen and various other people from the Sky River crew helped out on the Seattle Pop Festival.
and that was held in Woodinville,
Yes,
Gold Creek Park.
Gold Creek Park, that's right.
And
that was manageable, wasn't it?
that was actually modeled after the Monterey Pop
Yes,
Festival.
that was
Monterey, yeah.
much closer.
They had
than-
water, electricity there.
Yeah.
That's right.
Helicopters.
Quite the lineup.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ike and Tina Turner.
Led Zeppelin and the Doors.
The Doors.
And
yeah.
Birds and oh, the Doors. My God,
What about
Morrison.
him?
Oh
Tell us
Lord,
about
was he
Morrison.
drunk? He
Oh,
was
was
just
he?
incredibly, disgustingly drunk.
Did he perform okay?
Yeah, he managed. You know, I guess they just sort of poked something in his back, and he would do his routine.
Wind him up.
Yeah, that's right. I don't know. He didn't live much longer after that. Didn't he die in 70?
Died pretty quick.
Yeah, poor guy. Well, he wanted the world, and he wanted it now.
Good point. Yeah.
So, what was your experience at Seattle Pop? Did you help as much as Bob and the other people did?
Yeah, I was involved.
What was your?
What were you doing?
What I always did at those festivals was run around and make sure that everything was happening properly, and if not, then trying to find solutions and stuff. That's what I always ended up doing.
Did you work with Boyd, or were you?
Sure.
How was it working with Boyd?
Oh, Boyd was okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was. I kind of liked him.
Good.
Let's see. Did Boyd help you at all at Sky 2?
Oh yes.
How?
Yeah. He helped in getting the talent.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And
Well, it's a mystery to me.
he was very, you could trust him. He
To
was-
deliver the goods.
Yeah, and to deliver the goods on the terms that had been agreed.
Do you think it was
That's not always true with people.
When we were running the OCS, the Eagles Auditorium, then Boyd came down and asked if he could help. So he became sort of part of the revenue
didn't
that
know
did
that.
that. And then we were asked by the Eagles whether or not, at some point, whether we wanted to continue doing it. And they hinted or indicated that they hoped we would, because they liked us, the Eagles people.
Yeah.
But we decided no, we weren't made to do concerts over and over and over again. So that's when Boyd picked it up.
Yeah.
But we didn't know was that Boyd was funded by Pat O'Day, who was actually the devil to us because of the way he used bands and his commercial radio.
He was the boss jock of the day.
jock,
Right.
Seattle's big radio voice at
So do you think
KJR.
that his money was involved in the?
That's what. Well, it was Northwest releasing.
Oh, okay.
That's what.
That's not Pat O'Day, though.
I don't think
No,
it is.
isn't Pat O'Day.
But that's what one of the guys that was with Northwest Releasing told me a few years later.
But it wasn't known to the general
But
public.
it was not known. Everybody said it. People.
You mean at the pop festival?
People hated Graffman. I could never figure out why. I thought he did a pretty good job on it. But I remember people would come up to me and say how much they hated him. And I'd say, why? Well, he took over. He pushed the Helix out. See, nobody knew.
No, he didn't push us
anything.
out.
But I remember saying, well, he hasn't. The prices there are fairly reasonable.
Did you ever go to any events in Bellingham?
Now, Bellingham was very close to my heart, and from the experience of doing the Sky Rivers and being associated with them, and more in my case, it's helping originate them, I was asked by the president of the student body in Bellingham to go up there and organize a festival, which I did, and we called it the Multi-Arts Festival. And it went on, for, I think we had it going for 2 weeks. We had 40 bands, we had free food, we had all sorts of gallery setups, exhibitions.
And when was this?
It was in
68?
spring of 71, wasn't it? Or was it the spring of 70?
70?
Now I'm slipping on that. I think it was the spring of 70, 68, 69. Yeah, because I was asked there.
Huh.
Oh, yes, that's right. Yes, I went up and do the festival, and then I was asked at the festival whether I would want to be an artist in residence at Fairhaven. I said, sure. So they arranged that, and I came back in the fall of 70, and I was there as an artist in residence. So that means, and I remember being asked a question about going up and being an artist in residence when I was at the Second Sky River, which was 69. I'm getting a little confused. I'll have it all sorted out with you later. But anyways, a marvelous festival, multi-arts festival. The entire budget for it was $2,000, which means, of course, that's nothing. How can you get 40 bands
And food
for that? Well, we did it because it was everybody just donated things, and I didn't make any money. I sold Helixes when I was up there, so it had to be when the Helix was still running. And when I was up there in that winter, I was actually living there, 69, 70. And I was selling. That's when I left the Helix, more or less, and I was really no longer editing it.
So you were...
It soon died.
So
thereafter.
you were not at the helm of the Helix, what, the last 6 months of it or something?
Nah, more like 4 or 5 months, yeah. I think I was really not around much in Seattle during that time.
Did you know Howard Giske back then?
Yeah.
Is that about the time you guys met each other?
Howard, in fact, showed up at that festival. And the reason I know that is he gave me pictures later on of Ken Kesey showing up for the festival. And the reason Ken Kesey was there is because my friend, and this goes back to what we were talking earlier, Paul Sawyer, the Unitarian preacher, was a very good friend of Ken Kesey's. He was one of his pranksters.
I was going to say, Paul was a
Sawyer,
prankster.
Paul the prankster. And he got Kesey to come up. And Kesey was, he was drunk.
No, don't you hate that?
He came up and he got out the car door, opened it, was a Volkswagen bus, and the guy was just too drunk. But he sobered up a bit. And then he did become part of it was part of a poetry reading. We had like a 12-hour-long poetry reading. We had poets from all over the Northwest come to this thing.
Tom Robbins?
No, Tom wasn't around. No, he wasn't involved in that. Anyway, Tom's not a poet. Maybe incidentally to writing a novel. Now, these were poets, people that really thought of themselves as being poets. And some of them came over from Spokane. I remember standing in the line, and a poet I knew from Spokane from years before was standing in the line waiting to get on, as was everybody else behind him. But one poet got up on stage, and rather than following the rules, so to speak, of holding there for maybe 15, 20 minutes at the most, held it for like 2.5 hours. And that's because it was, his name just came to my mind. It's the Zen guy, Schneider, poet Schneider. I was just fuming at him. I mean, I was just, there's no other way I could stop him because he was the star.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he and Ken Kesey were the stars, but Ken didn't. Ken played the game right, but boy, Schneider didn't. Schneider was invested with himself too much. It was a shame. So people had to wait for Schneider to get over. It was a wonderful festival. People loved it. Went on and on and on.
Well, who were some of the bands that played?
Well, it wasn't a name band thing. It was bands from the Northwest. A lot of bands came up from Seattle, and there were, at least the way I tell it to myself, is there were 40 different musical groups. Could there be that many?
Barry Curtis's band probably played there.
There were Uncle Henry, Fat Jack, Chrome Circus. Bands from Seattle. They came up. They all donated their time.
Did you ever go to any rock festivals in Canada?
Yes, I went up to the name of it I've forgotten, but I went to one that was out in the valley a little way. Strawberry Mountain. That was it. Yes, a bunch of us from the Helix jumped in a van and drove up there to go to that. It was marvelous.
Did you attend any other festivals up there?
No, that was the only festival. Drove up with Country Joe and the Fish in a split concert where we had them at Eagles Auditorium on Friday and Sunday, and then they played on Saturday. in Vancouver. So we drove them up there, and at the gate, at the border, we were all stripped and examined in separate rooms. And we all had to answer the question, have you ever used drugs? With the answer, no. So we had to learn. My name is Paul Dorpat.
This is good.
Spelled Dorpat, D-O-R. D as in dog, O-R. P as in pooch, A-T, Dorpat. It's the name of a town in Estonia. It's the university town in Estonia. If you Google me, it's a good chance you'll get the university as much as you'll get me, see. But don't be confused by that. Just go down the list a little bit and I'll be there. Any other questions?
This is very good.